meet a lot.
Yeah.
Very central. It should be the closest person.
It's
with
real
it.
neat. I mean, it's been several years since I've been there.
We're gonna take,
But it's beautiful views and,
Where is it?
oh, it's out by the Golden Gate Bridge, kind of. You can see that, what, Fort Mason?
Oh, yeah.
Fort Mason's that,
What is that, Greens?
Green.
Oh, Greens is a good place.
don't put it against me.
I haven't been there in a long time.
In fact, that was one of the real issues in the divorce.
That was probably one of the first gourmet vegetarian restaurants.
And so what I ended up having to do was to borrow the recipe box and copy the recipes out of it that I wanted.
Are you kidding me?
No,
When the hell did this go back on the book?
the recipe box of,
I've
recipe
taken that
cards
one.
that weren't the recipe book, but it was like
I can do that.
The
As a
recipe
psychotherapist,
for-
I learned how to do
pork chops a la Stewart.
Our group doesn't tell time well, huh? Or wait a second. The group in the room tells time in the room.
But we're not the people you need to talk to.
Those are broad assumptions. Let's start.
We definitely ran like looking at book up on the library.
Okay. And Reese.
Oh, thank you.
Right. So what I'd like to do is, well, I ended up getting started. So I want to start to build an action plan, and so I'm not putting them in order yet. We'll come back and then order them in terms of priorities. And I wanted to start with the kind of the last time on our agenda, because I do think we've been talking a lot about what is the role of the commission in terms of advocacy for the library. And I've got some offers up here. We'll cross them off the list if you don't agree. I want to try to get a head start on this. So in terms of an action plan around library advocacy, I think you have the opportunity to build capacity in yourselves as a commission by continuing to do work like this, and in doing the standard operating protocols or procedures, or whatever you want to call it, practice, whatever you want to call it. I think that can also have an effect in building capacity in staff and the library in terms of being a great partner, right, with the library staff. Also with the labs and the way that we talked about it, in terms of being able to get in conversation with them about how can we all find discrete ways to contribute and support each other, so that the whole, is greater than the sum of its parts. And then also, we didn't talk a lot about the Friends of the Library and the foundation, and yet I still think there's room for that in terms of the work of the group, who might actually start with the one sheet of paper that kind of talks about, here's the commission, how does it relate to, and then you start to build that, right, that clarity. I think that you also have the opportunity to build advocacy through the budget approval process, because you've got the library goals and then your own criteria, potentially, in terms of how you apply the proposed budget options against those goals. And I want you guys as a group to be thinking in terms of 3 buckets of stuff. One is sustenance, all right? That's the middle line. That's sustaining something isn't increasing it, and it's not decreasing it, right? Sustaining is taking no more out than you put in. Putting in enough that it stays the same. So sustenance is certain things that are like core library things that, like moving the books around, still has to happen, right? You need to sustain that in terms of delivery. Investments is on kind of left-hand first idea, because these are the initiatives that might arise because of the strategic plan that might need special attention or special funding to get them off the ground. They might be new arenas. They might be new things that are happening because of the strategic plan, right? So investments and then sustenance. And then there's another kind of bucket of stuff, which is, how could I just put it this way? Divestment. I realize that some library has been in kind of a tough place for a long time now. And so, you know, some people would say there's probably nothing left to divest of, get rid of, stop doing. And I will tell you, there's still some. There's still some things that I think that, you know, anything should be able to be talked about in terms of divestments. Because one of the ways to create capacity with no new funding is to stop doing something. Right?
Like when we start being open on Monday.
Right. Right. So I would actually look for the waste in the system first.
I'm sorry.
I would actually start looking for the, I would have staff start looking for the waste in the system first. Because I
Oh, I
think,
know, but that's-
yeah, that's an example, perfect example. And I think we could be looking for, is there waste in the system? Because I think that there's probably a lot of stuff that happens in the way that it happens, taking as much time as it does, only because that's always been the way it's been done, right?
Like the hour, they're open an hour before they open for the public, because they've done that.
Right. Although I have to say, you know, I appreciate that in terms of customer service.
Uh-huh.
The reason I do is because they're scrambling around, hopefully, what they're doing in that hour is they're scrambling around getting all the books back on the shelf that came in like overnight or whatever, and they're getting stuff ready to go on delivery so we can get to the next place and get picked up as a whole as soon as possible. If they're just sitting around not doing anything, then, you know, I would question it. So the idea that, you know, the grocery stores, in the best grocery stores, the only time people are stocking shelves when people are shopping is in the areas where they want to engage them, like in the fruits and vegetables, right? Right? Because then, you know, people can ask them questions. What is that? What is that thing? How can I cook that? What do I do with that? Or they say, no, they're stocking them. So anyway, it's this thing that behind the scenes stuff should happen behind the scenes. So I'm all for opening it out early if you can get all of that stuff so that when people are coming through the door, you can be there for them. Although I will tell you that I'm not for people spending 3 times the amount of time to do something because it keeps them from being on the floor because they don't like that so much as they like, you know, not having to deal with people. Okay, so I you know, and if the staff is not bringing to you the idea, the concepts around divestment, you as a commission could be asking for that. You could be asking, can we create capacity by stopping doing anything? You know, stopping anything.
And we can only ask, and we'll ask Brett that.
Exactly.
Good.
Right? Okay, so you've got building capacity in the groups, yourself included. Using the budget approval process to continue to build capacity, and in terms of being smart about how you apply, you know, the criteria and the goals that you are making with the library. This is not you making it for the library, right? And then another way to build capacity, I think, is, and let's be explicit about it, is this whole concept of SOPs, right? And then also retention and recruitment.
You're putting that with SOPs?
I think it becomes one of your standing operating procedures.
And we're only talking about commissioners, we're not talking about.
Actually, I think I'm talking about everything. I think you guys should, like, keep your fingers on the pulse of everything, right? In terms of the LABs, and be part of the conversation, and keep your eye out for people in the community that you would want to connect with, you know, LABs or whatever. So it's that just kind of being the connectors, which is, and it also, it helps keep your ear open to all of the stuff that's emerging, right, in terms of issues that are kind of bubbling up in communities, right? And then the SOP we talked about is going to cover a whole lot of stuff in terms of your agreements and working together, communication protocols, annual calendar, you know, clarity on the budget cycle, what's happening on an annual basis, where your criteria come from in terms of your goals, from the strategic plan, etc. So all of that should be laid out, right, in an SOP. How else can you create advocacy?
Maybe I'm missing something about advocacy, but this looks like doing our job,
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
And I don't see the community in there anywhere.
Right, that's what I'm asking. How else can you create advocacy? I just put the stuff up here that we've been talking about. Yeah. Because I do think your job, doing your job, is about advocacy. So, how else might we?
Well, the Speakers Bureau, which encourages commissioners to go out into the public and talk about the library, talk about what we have and what we need,
Right?
connect with our appointing authorities in a big way.
Right, so actually the engagement thing, so this is all kind of around engagement, right? So this is your municipalities, you mean your appointing bodies.
Right. Cities, counties.
Other things, engagement, yeah.
Getting to know the foundation. Person to person, people to people, so we know who these people are.
I think so. I mean, they are probably, the difference between, the difference tends to happen between foundations and friends of the library groups is, friends groups are, across the country are doing, are encountering the exact same thing you're talking about. An aging population and no new blood, or very little new blood coming in, right? In terms of, and foundations are coming around and kind of together for kind of a different reason. And friends groups, the most successful ones are the ones that are changing their practices to you know, and moving kind of beyond, not beyond, moving to a broader platform than book sales. So the foundation, and then also potentially by helping, you know, friends engage a new generation and to perpetuate the friends groups so that they will continue, right? Yeah.
Another thing that we haven't talked about in terms of labs, we've spoken about the circle of labs.
Yeah.
But the other issue is beginning to generate advocacy through the labs. Having the lab members see themselves as library advocates. And how to...
So actually, these two right here should be doing this, right?
Yeah.
So there is that circle there in terms of, again, you feed them and they feed you.
Right.
Right,
Well,
'cause they
no,
come-
also, you know, do they belong to Rotary?
Right?
How can they talk about the library at Rotary? You know, that I don't know to what degree the labs see themselves as representatives of the community. And giving them support in how to be a representative for the community and how to be advocates for the library in the community.
Yes.
You know, I don't see that just being labs. I mean, I would see that, what do you have, community connections?
Right, so I've got, you know, this is about building capacity in commission and labs and community connections and representations, and representation of the community. And then that would happen for the staff of the library and the friends of the library and the foundation as well, I think.
Okay, and then I guess I would add at the bottom of your list, where you've got engagement going, is civic events, engagement, being out there and wearing your name tag.
Yeah, like it was
Talking to the number 7.
And those, again, I mean, whatever, you know, whoever you run into,
Eventually, we'll get
be a
business
library
cards.
commissioner.
Right.
Remember that whole thing about having business cards?
You don't have them yet.
No.
So, okay, so on our action plan, we need business cards. Okay? How else might you engage?
So it's a good start.
It is. I would like you to be thinking multi-generationally.
That's, yeah.
Like schools
Yes.
and children's groups like the Girls and Boys Club.
I think that's a great idea. I think, and maybe it's not even you, maybe it's you and somebody else that you want to highlight and build, you know, speaking ability or whatever. Maybe you want to give teens who have community service requirements something that they might enjoy doing.
Yeah, most of the high schools here have that
Right.
requirement to be able to
Yeah.
graduate.
It's never too early to start recruiting commissioners.
Yes,
And we had more applications for some of our labs
Yeah.
from young people than we had slots.
And it would be great somehow.
That's great.
You talked about the friends, putting new blood into the friends, if there's a way to get younger people to join the friends, even if it is
Yes.
pay for their membership for
Yes.
1 year and have them really participate.
Comp the membership or do whatever, you
Yeah.
know,
And
whatever.
I had a librarian at our branch recommend, because I think all of us now have a team rep on the lab. And her recommendation was to have 2 team reps on the lab.
That's
Because,
We have three.
so that they're not alone, feeling.
You're not
like-
alone, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I think that's a great idea, yeah.
Since you mentioned branch manager, we need more input from the staff for these great ideas. And I'm intrigued at the fact that you spent X amount of time talking to people about just this thing about Central, because I'd like to know more about that at some point in time.
Sure.
But, the staff has great ideas, and the branch managers are kind of recipients, but maybe, I don't know how to, without messing up the reporting and stuff like that, how to hear from people.
So,
Inside.
Okay, let's hold that, and is this a different topic, or?
when we're talking about that, we should all commit to attending the staff development day all day.
Uh-huh,
And the labs don't they have an annual conference? We should commit.
Not yet, but we need
Not
to.
yet.
Yeah, the lab, if they have an annual conference, we should attend those. I mean, as much as possible. People have plans. I mean, Paul has to go to Argentina and Maui. So I'm jealous as heck. And,
Maui is,
oh, it's a big island, sorry. But the more things we know about ahead of time that we should attend.
right. So I think that's a great thing in terms of like your annual calendar, right? So when you're looking for the annual calendar, you should be looking to the library to tell you what you should be at, right?
And is it appropriate for us, through Brett, to say, okay, you're having this annual staff day coming up, which is on the agenda to approve. What part of getting feedback from the staff is involved in that?
That would be good.
Yeah.
To ask him who's
Yeah.
planning that and what's that involved?
Yes. There's a lot of preaching too, and I just,
Right, so again, it could be that you are talking to Brett about that. It could also be that if you have certain, you might even ask to have 20 minutes on the agenda of a staff day, so that you can show up and do a quick presentation of your beautiful one-page thing that says, this is what the commission does, and this is how the commission works, right? For you, right? In support of you.
yeah.
Right.
But that again is more preaching to the staff rather than going, we want to do it.
And it could also be kind of, what are the things that are important, like, again, what are the things that are important to you that we should know about, right? Yes,
And I think there's a role to be out there in the branches, talking to people, hearing whatever feedback people have to give, but as long as you're not giving the impression that you are there to
Do something
to
about
solve the
it,
problem.
yeah.
But I think like being aware of what's going on and being available to people is a good thing. Information gathering is a good thing.
and I'd like to, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, a safer place to do this, so we don't veer off into the advocate, or I'm gonna take care of your problem. A safer place to do this is an all-staff day, where you're hearing collectively,
Right.
from
Right.
the staff, and then you're not gonna be as at risk of.
I love that, and really, the one thing that I'm thinking about, like where the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. So the thing that I'm thinking about is being available is being approachable.
Right.
Being
I mean,
approachable,
with very clear
being approachable
boundaries.
with very clear boundaries is great, because it makes you a human, right? It makes you a
Right.
human. Also, another way to, what I would love you guys to do is spend at least half, if not 90% of your time asking about what's working, right? Because the minute you start asking about what's not working, people's minds go into this and they get sucked into that. When you talk about what's work, what great thing happened here, today or this last month or whatever, or what ideas have you implemented lately that you love me to hear about? Asking, what great thing have you guys done lately? Asking those kind of questions is great because it flips It flips stuff, because when you ask people what's wrong, they'll find stuff that's wrong, right? And where they've got to be or whatever. And I'm not saying that those things aren't valid. They are. And what we don't want to do is create a situation where you're the vehicle, right?
Right.
So being approachable is great, and using that to find things like, what's going on? I need stories to tell. I need stories to tell about great stuff that's happening in our libraries. What's going on here? Right? So when you ask that, they get excited, and then they tell you great stories, and then everybody feels good. And if they, try to parlay that into something, then, they'd be more explicit about, that's probably something that needs to go through another channel. And then if they say, well, I can't do that, then say, well, if you could just give me a very short, thing, then I'll relay it onto the director. Because you're being explicit that you're not going to deal with it, but you can relay it on, right? Whatever that looks like. So again, just being explicit, having the boundaries, being approachable, and asking them to relay good stories, that's huge. That's huge in terms of building excitement.
Well, plus it just makes our job so much easier to have those stories in our pockets.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, you're
Yes.
at some event, whatever it might be, and, oh, really, well, tell me about the library. Well, I just talked to a librarian and X.
Yes.
So it just makes it easy.
And you guys actually, all right, so you need some, you need some tools. So one of them is, wouldn't it be great if you had a place to park all those stories? So you didn't have to carry them around in your head, or you didn't have, you had a way to share them with others. And so, I'm thinking some sort of knowledge base or depository that just says, oh, this is where I'm gonna go, because I'm gonna get ready for this depository for stories, etc. So I'm gonna get ready to go to this cocktail party, or if you're not going to a cocktail party, where might you be going? You're not going to cocktail parties, so you might be going to book club, right? Whatever,
Reading
okay.
group,
Yeah, so for stories,
bridge players.
etc.
League of Women Voters.
Right, there you go. So that way you don't have to remember them all, and you can see if new ones, and you guys can add new ones in terms of